Imagine you wake up in a world where the sky has not yet been sealed, where the boundary between heaven and earth is thin as smoke, and beings of terrible light walk among men. You are standing at the edge of an ancient village, barefoot on cracked earth still warm from the day's sun. The air smells of iron and burning wood. Your hands tremble. Not from cold. From what you are about to witness. Because there, at the center of the village, surrounded by men with wide and terrified eyes, stands a figure taller than any human being you have ever seen, eyes like burning coals, skin pale as moonlight, a voice that vibrates inside your chest like thunder before the storm. And he is teaching. He is teaching things that were never meant for human ears. Things that would break the world. His name is Azazel. And after tonight, nothing in the ancient world will ever be the same. Long before the great flood erased what came before, long before the waters rose and swallowed every trace of the antediluvian world, there existed a time described in some of the oldest and most mysterious texts ever discovered, a time when the Book of Enoch says the boundaries between the divine and the human were violated in ways so catastrophic that they triggered nothing less than the destruction of civilization itself. The Book of Enoch, one of the most remarkable ancient texts ever found, preserved in Ethiopian traditions and among the Dead Sea Scrolls, speaks of a group of celestial beings known as the Watchers, the fallen Watcher Angels, who descended from the heavens onto a mountain called Hermon and made a terrible pact. They swore an oath together. They would descend. They would take human wives. And they would teach humanity the forbidden knowledge of heaven. Among all these fallen angels, among all the Watcher Angels of the Book of Enoch, none was considered more dangerous, more destructive, or more directly responsible for the corruption of the ancient world than Azazel. According to the ancient text, it was Azazel who bore the greatest weight of guilt. It was Azazel whose teachings were described as the root of all corruption. And it was Azazel alone who was singled out by divine judgment for a punishment unlike any other. But what exactly did Azazel teach? What were these terrible and forbidden things that Azazel the fallen Watcher Angel of the Book of Enoch placed into the hands of human beings? Why were his teachings considered so catastrophic that they warranted the near-total destruction of the antediluvian world through the Great Flood? To understand this, we must descend into the ancient text itself, into the pages of the Book of Enoch, and follow the story of Azazel from his descent to his final binding in the darkness beneath the earth. Because what Azazel taught was not merely knowledge. It was the weaponization of the human soul. And according to some of the oldest traditions known to mankind, the world we inherited was shaped, and scarred, by what Azazel revealed. The Book of Enoch describes Azazel as one of the chief leaders among the Watcher Angels, those fallen angels who abandoned their station in the heavenly realm and descended to the earth in the antediluvian age. The Watchers, as they are called, saw the daughters of men and desired them. But Azazel's role went beyond mere desire. Azazel was a teacher. A corrupter by instruction. A being who understood that the most devastating weapon was not a sword, it was knowledge placed in the hands of those who were not ready to wield it. And so Azazel began to teach. According to the Book of Enoch, Azazel taught men the art of making swords, the forbidden knowledge of metalworking transformed into the craft of war. Before Azazel, ancient traditions suggest, humanity did not possess the full arsenal of weapons that would eventually turn the antediluvian world into a place of bloodshed and violence. But Azazel changed that. Azazel taught men how to forge blades from metal, how to shape shields and breastplates, how to construct the instruments of war that would allow one human being to destroy another with terrible efficiency. The knowledge of weapons, the forbidden art of warfare, the craft of turning raw earth and fire into instruments of death, this was the terrible gift that Azazel the fallen Watcher Angel of the Book of Enoch gave to the men of the ancient world. But Azazel did not stop with the men. The Book of Enoch is explicit, Azazel also turned his corrupting teachings toward women. And what Azazel taught women was, in many ways, described as equally devastating, not through weapons of iron, but through the weapons of vanity and seduction. According to the ancient text, Azazel revealed to women the secrets of ornaments and cosmetics, the knowledge of adornment, of jewelry, of how to beautify and decorate the human body in ways that inflamed desire and distorted the natural order. The forbidden knowledge of beautification. The art of seduction as a tool of corruption. Azazel taught women how to use color, decoration, and physical appearance as instruments of power and manipulation. In the ancient world described by the Book of Enoch, this teaching was considered catastrophic not because beauty itself was evil, but because Azazel taught its use as a weapon, a tool to destabilize the spiritual and social fabric of antediluvian civilization. The women of the ancient world, according to these ancient traditions, learned from Azazel how to use their appearance to seduce, to manipulate, to corrupt, and through this, the fallen angel deepened the wound he had already opened through the teaching of warfare. The combination was devastating. On one side, men armed with the forbidden knowledge of weapons and metalworking, learning from Azazel how to make swords, shields, knives, and instruments of war. On the other side, women equipped with the forbidden knowledge of adornment and seduction, learning from Azazel how to ornament themselves, how to use cosmetics, how to make jewelry from metals and precious stones. Together, these two streams of forbidden knowledge created exactly what the ancient text describes, a world drowning in violence and lust, where the antediluvian civilization that had once walked more closely with the divine had been thoroughly corrupted. The Book of Enoch makes a remarkable and disturbing claim: it was not any single act of violence that destroyed the antediluvian world. It was the spread of forbidden knowledge. Knowledge that humanity was not spiritually mature enough to handle. Knowledge that Azazel, the fallen watcher angel, chose to release into the world for reasons the ancient text never fully explains, but whose consequences echoed across generations until the great flood finally came to wash it all away. And there was more. The teachings of Azazel in the Book of Enoch extended beyond weapons and vanity. The ancient text speaks also of Azazel's role in teaching sorcery and enchantments, the forbidden magical arts of the antediluvian world. In some interpretations of the ancient traditions, Azazel's corrupting knowledge included the roots of forbidden magic, how to use herbs, stones, and ancient rituals to bend reality, to contact dark forces, to perform acts that violated the natural order established in the original creation. The world of the Watcher Angels was a world saturated with forbidden knowledge, and Azazel stood at its center, pouring that knowledge into human hands like poison into a well. Every sword forged by a man who learned from Azazel carried the taint of fallen angel instruction. Every woman who learned the secrets of adornment from Azazel's forbidden teachings became, according to these ancient traditions, an unwitting instrument of the corruption of the antediluvian world. What makes the story of Azazel in the Book of Enoch particularly haunting is the divine response to his teachings. When the ancient text describes the judgment that fell upon the Watcher Angels, it reserves a singular punishment for Azazel alone. While other fallen angels faced various forms of divine judgment, the Book of Enoch describes Azazel's fate in stark and specific terms. The archangel Raphael was commanded to bind Azazel, to bind him hand and foot, to cast him into the darkness of a place called Dudael, to cover him in rough and jagged rocks, to throw darkness over him, and to leave him there until the day of final judgment. Azazel would be imprisoned in the earth itself, bound beneath the rocks in a lightless pit, as punishment for his terrible teachings. And then the ancient text delivers perhaps its most devastating line about Azazel: all sin was ascribed to him. Not merely some sin. Not merely the sin of those he taught directly. All sin. The entire weight of the corruption of the antediluvian world, the entire cascade of violence and lust and forbidden knowledge that destroyed civilization before the flood, all of it, according to the Book of Enoch, was laid at the feet of Azazel. This is a profound and disturbing claim. Why would the ancient text make Azazel the single point of responsibility for the entire corruption of the antediluvian world? Some scholars who study these ancient traditions suggest that Azazel functions as something more than a character in the story. He functions as a symbol. A symbol of the corruption that comes from knowledge without wisdom. The forbidden knowledge that Azazel taught was not inherently evil in the heavenly realm: the arts of metalworking, the understanding of natural beauty, the knowledge of the earth's materials, but placed in the hands of beings who were spiritually immature, who were already being pulled toward violence and lust by the corrupting influence of the fallen Watcher Angels and the Nephilim. This knowledge became catastrophic. Azazel represents, in the ancient symbolic language of the Book of Enoch, the terrible danger of forbidden knowledge, the way that what should be sacred can be twisted into a weapon when given to those who are not ready for it. There is also a remarkable connection between Azazel in the Book of Enoch and one of the most famous rituals of ancient tradition, the ritual of the scapegoat in the Hebrew Scriptures. In the ancient Day of Atonement ritual described in Leviticus, 2 goats were chosen, one was sacrificed to God, and one, the scapegoat, was sent into the wilderness bearing the sins of the people. And the name of the wilderness, according to some ancient interpreters, was Azazel. The goat was not merely sent into the desert. It was sent to Azazel, to the place where the fallen watcher angel was bound in darkness beneath the rocks. This extraordinary connection between the Book of Enoch's Azazel and the ancient atonement ritual suggests that the memory of Azazel, the fallen watcher angel, the teacher of forbidden knowledge, was woven deep into the spiritual traditions of the ancient world. His name carried weight. His story carried meaning. Long after the antediluvian world was destroyed, long after the Great Flood, the ancient traditions continued to remember Azazel, not just as a fallen angel, but as the entity upon whom the accumulated weight of human sin was symbolically cast. The world that Azazel helped corrupt was, according to the Book of Enoch, a world of terrifying beauty and violence. The antediluvian civilization described in these ancient traditions was a world where Nephilim giants walked the earth, the offspring of the fallen watcher angels and human women, where cities existed that we have lost all memory of, where knowledge that we have not yet recovered was practiced freely. Into this world, Azazel poured his forbidden teachings like fuel onto a fire. The men he taught became warriors and weapon makers, figures whose violence escalated beyond anything the ancient world had seen before. The women he taught became figures whose beauty and adornment drew the Nephilim and the fallen angels deeper into their corruption. The entire civilization spiraled downward. The violence increased. The forbidden knowledge spread. And eventually, according to the ancient text, the cries of the earth itself rose up to heaven, the planet groaning under the weight of what the watcher angels and Azazel had done, and the divine judgment that followed was the Great Flood. But why does any of this matter today? Why do ancient texts like the Book of Enoch, with their stories of Azazel the fallen watcher angel, their accounts of forbidden knowledge and antediluvian corruption, continue to fascinate and disturb readers thousands of years after they were written? Perhaps because the story of Azazel is, at its core, a story about a danger that never entirely disappeared. The Book of Enoch's vision of Azazel is a vision of knowledge as corruption, of the idea that certain forms of understanding, certain capabilities, when placed in unprepared hands, will always tend toward destruction rather than creation. The weapons that Azazel taught men to forge are still being forged. The arts of adornment and manipulation that Azazel taught are still being practiced. The ancient text does not claim that this is Azazel's fault in the present day. The fallen watcher angel has been bound in darkness since the antediluvian age, awaiting the final judgment described in the Book of Enoch. But the knowledge he released has never been recalled. The forbidden teachings of Azazel entered the world in that ancient time, and according to these traditions, they have been part of human civilization ever since. The Book of Enoch ends the story of Azazel not with redemption, but with binding. Darkness. Rocks. Waiting. Azazel, the fallen watcher angel who taught men the art of war and women the art of seduction, who was declared responsible for all the sin of the antediluvian world, lies imprisoned in a place called Dudael, covered in darkness and jagged stone, until the day of the great judgment. And in the ancient Day of Atonement ritual, year after year, the scapegoat was sent into the wilderness carrying the weight of human sin, sent to the place where Azazel waits in the dark. It is one of the oldest and most haunting images in the entire history of religion and mythology, the idea that there is a place in the deep earth where the first great teacher of forbidden knowledge is bound and waiting, that the sins of humanity have always been, in some ancient symbolic sense, his to carry. What did Azazel teach? He taught humanity how to destroy itself. And according to the Book of Enoch, one of the most extraordinary ancient texts ever discovered, the world we live in today is still living with the consequences of what was taught in that ancient night, under the burning eyes of a fallen watcher angel who stood in the center of a village and changed everything.